Hello and welcome to my first ever episode of the D Louise Poetry Podcast. I'm D Louise. This episode is called Sitting with If, From Curiosity to Complexity. I decided to start this podcast as a commitment to myself. I recently discovered a love for poetry. I started off by just writing poetry. I experienced how healing it is, not just to write, but to read and share poetry. Since then, I've been looking for a way to incorporate learning more. I've now begun sharing my poems on social media each month, and I wanted to also create this podcast as part of that commitment to keep learning. This podcast is about sitting with poems, even when they're complicated, to ask questions that don't always have neat answers, and to start a conversation. Today's episode is about a poem that surprised me, Rudyard Kipling's If. Even before I read the first line, the title pulled me in. Just if. Like a doorway to something unfinished. I didn't know what would come next, but I wanted to find out. And when I did, I was struck by the steadiness of the voice. The poem felt like a quiet challenge, a kind of inner blueprint. How to survive chaos without losing yourself. Before we go any further, I'd like to read it with you, so you get a chance to have that experience before we talk about it. So this is If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise, if you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. I wonder what parts of the poem stood out to you. I think there's a calm power in those lines. That opening, you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs. It hit me as a kind of emotional maturity. The poem doesn't ask you to fight back or flare up. It asks for presence, for composure, for holding on. As the poem unfolds, the rhythm builds like a heartbeat, a list of things to endure, things to survive. And I kept thinking, I can relate to that. It made me feel seen. But then I started researching Kipling for this episode, and things got more complicated. Kipling wasn't just a poet. He was also a vocal advocate of the British Empire. His poem, The White Man's Burden, was a shocking read. To put it mildly, it openly promotes colonialism, and that context changes things. It casts a shadow. Suddenly, lines that once felt grounded started to raise questions. The line, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves. Was that wisdom? Or was it a way to dismiss people who opposed your views? Colonialism. Another line, or being hated, don't give way to hating. Reading that line again now, I'm beginning to think, well, who is it that might hate? And why? It made me think about the kind of strength that's being celebrated here. Is it resilience? Or is it refusal? A way to avoid acknowledging pain, especially the kind caused by systems of power. That contradiction stays with me. Because I do still see value in the poem, in the call to remain rooted in the face of turmoil. But I also see how easily that message can become detached from compassion. But that's why I chose to share it this month. Not just because I initially related to it, but because my relationship to it shifted. Because poetry isn't just about falling in love with a line, it's also about staying open when that love gets more complicated. This space I'm building isn't only for celebration. It's for reflection, for tension, for letting complexity live alongside connection. A place where being grounded, even while questioning, is its own quiet form of resistance. Thank you for listening to today's episode. My full reflection is up on the D Louise Poetry blog. If something in this poem stirred something in you, a thought, a discomfort, a memory, your comments are always welcome. Join me next week for an episode on what's inspired my poems for this month and how they link to this reflection. You've been listening to the D Louise Poetry Podcast. Until next time.